when we loosen muscles, what's happening is that we're asking muscles to not do what they're supposed to do. And we just reviewed 3 really amazing things that muscles do. Number 1, they try to move you. They allow you to move. Number 2, they keep joints healthy. And number 3, they protect us. So here's the thing. When you're trying to loosen muscles, you're asking the muscles to do a worse job at those 3 things.
Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we are coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. And if you're looking for an opportunity to learn how to improve your health from local experts here in the Schaumburg area, then you need to check out the 2020 Schaumburg Health Summit. Julie, you want to tell them more about what's going to be going on at the 2020 Schaumburg Health Summit?
Absolutely. So last year in 2019, actually still this year, we debuted our first ever Schaumburg Health Summit, and it is coming back in 2020. So the Schaumburg Health Summit 2020 will be on April 4th, 2020. It will run from 9 to 1 p.m. And the way this awesome event runs is we put together 8 different health experts from around the community to talk about not what they do, but something of topic related to your health that you can start acting on. Last year we had from holistic nutrition to pain management to internal medicine to aesthetics and fitness, mindset, goal setting. It was just an awesome event to hear from true professionals on how you can start making change in your lifestyle and in your life right now. So good news for you. Tickets are on sale. You can go to schaumburghealthsummit.com. Tickets are $40. And what you get with that is all the freebies that our vendors will be giving out, obviously the event, and we will have heavy snacks as well for your enjoyment. So if you are interested in coming, definitely get your tickets now. You can also apply to speak if you are a health professional that would like to share some interesting information with the community. You can also apply to sponsor if you'd like to promote your business and or give out cool opportunities and freebies to our attendees. So make sure everything is on our website at schaumburghealthsummit.com. Make sure to get plugged in.
Now, today we are talking about a topic that we hear questions about quite often, and it's often vilified and is often the scapegoat for everybody's issues that they're experiencing, and it's this idea of muscle tightness. And everybody thinks that, muscle tightness, it's such an issue to have these tight muscles. They're so uncomfortable. We need to get rid of them. But what we're actually proposing today is, can your muscles be too loose? And we want to explore that question with you, and we want to discuss some ideas because we don't ever really hear people talking about, my muscles are just too loose. Only kind of in relatively extreme scenarios or relatively small portions of the population do people really concern themselves with, I feel like my muscles are just too loose. But the vast majority of the population is talking about, my muscles feel too tight. And so oftentimes it's brought up that, the looser you can get, the better. And we want to say, hold on a second. We need to discuss this a little bit because is it possible that your muscles can be too loose? And what are the potential ramifications of that?
Charlie, it is such a great question, and it's such a good reason for us to talk about this is because people are always kind of glorifying looseness of muscles. It's like the more loose, the better. And we never consider the alternative. I think the only consistent population that I know of, and maybe you'll know of someone else, but are people that are double jointed, and they just have this extreme motion there, and they always are like, I need to tighten up and whatever. And actually, I'd like to share that everyone should tighten up a little bit. And we're going to get to why I'm saying that in later in this podcast, because really that that is the end mission. But I think that the reason people like feeling like their muscles are loose is because we hate the opposite. We hate the feeling of tightness, which, by the way, usually it's not a physical thing, it's a symptomatic thing. It's like something we're feeling. Like all of us, including Charlie and I, don't like feeling tight. We don't like feeling restricted in motion. We don't like feeling in pain, or something is twangy or zingy, or all those funky words we use to describe tight muscles. Don't worry, Charlie and I don't like them either. We don't want you to have them. But what we are constantly questioning, Charlie and I and many of our colleagues, is the way we address them. Is it the appropriate way? Is it the only way? Because I gotta say, a lot of people try to address their tight muscles and they don't seem to ever change, meaning they're constantly having to loosen them, constantly having to stretch them or massage them. And so really, it's an interesting question when we're saying, well, can things get too loose? Because a lot of people, at least I know a lot of people that are constantly trying to loosen their muscles. Like, do they get too loose? I don't know. We're going to be talking about that.
So first, let's kind of talk about what is meant by this idea of feeling loose. All right. When somebody says, hey, I want to loosen up, or I want to feel looser, or I am feeling loose, what's often meant by that? And I think there are a couple interpretations. There's probably more, but we're going to discuss a couple of them. And I think one is that objectively, they can move more than maybe what they're accustomed to moving, or what they previously could move. Like their arms can move farther, their legs can move farther, their trunk can turn more. So there's an objective measurement of, yes, I can move more now than I did previously, and we're relating that to looseness. And I think that's sometimes the case for when people say, oh, like I'm feeling loose, or I want to loosen up. But the majority of the time that we're interacting with people and they're talking about either feeling loose or wanting to loosen up, I really think that what's being discussed is more the subjective aspect of this feeling of looseness, meaning the feeling of not having like your muscles contracting really hard, or this feeling of not being restricted in motion, or being able to move how your body wants to move, okay? Whether objectively you're able to or not, it's the perception of it. And so we want to discuss this aspect of it, of this feeling sensation standpoint, because I think there's a lot of gray area in the interpretation of this idea of feeling loose, which leaves a lot of opportunity to actually address this feeling looseness or this feeling tightness in a manner that's not detrimental to your system.
You're right, Charlie. So many people are really chasing the symptomatic feeling, or like what we're feeling, not necessarily what's actually happening. And so the positive of feeling the feelings, right? Feeling the tightness, and we're trying to chase the feeling of not feeling that tightness, is that it's a good way for our body to tell us, hey, something's not going on. Something's not going well here. We're having to have this weird symptom. That's the positive. The negative is that we always think very straightforward, in that we think, oh, it's tight. I feel symptoms there. Let's loosen it. Let's try to get rid of that symptom, which totally makes sense, because I think as humans, we're like averse to anything that's uncomfortable. So like when our muscles are uncomfortable, let's get rid of the uncomfortableness. So we almost are promoting, like in our brains, we first think, how can I get this muscle to not contract, tightness? How can I get this to not be tight? And so we do things to loosen that muscle. But Charlie and I were just discussing this, and we thought, well, I wonder if people realize like what the cost of not having muscles contracting appropriately is, right? So the method we currently do is, oh, it's too tight, let's loosen it. But we never say, hey, well, what's the negative side effect of loosening muscles? Because we know like the positive side effect, at least temporarily, is like, oh, I feel looser, But do we really understand what are muscles doing in the first place, number one, and what are they doing to be extra tight? What are they serving us for? Because it is in my like corest belief of how the body functions that our body never makes mistakes. So if you have a tight muscle, It's not like, whoops, woke up with some tight hamstrings today on accident, sorry, maybe tomorrow will be better. No, you woke up with tight hamstrings for a reason. Like your body put them there for a reason. It's not like a mistake. So here's the deal. Muscles are incredibly important for our body. And, we actually never, I don't know, a lot of people don't talk about the value of muscles. Okay, so number one, muscles are so important because they're the things that allow us to move, right? So they allow our arm to lift and go down. They allow us to squat down and come back up. They allow us to go up and down stairs, run, walk. All the things you do during the day, your muscles are solely responsible for them. Also, muscles are responsible for keeping and guiding joints. So when muscles are working as they should, your joints are very well protected. Number one, your joints get to move in full range, which is very important for joint health. And number two, your muscles get to do this thing that's like a kind of a pumping pressure motion for your joint, which we call imbibition in your joint, which is the thing that keeps it all lubed up, right? So usually joints feel good when you don't feel them, and they feel bad when you do feel them. We usually call that some kind of stage of arthritis or crepitus. And so muscles do this really amazing thing. They allow us to move. They allow us to keep our joints healthy. And here's the other part which is what we need to talk about today, is that they try to protect us. And so the way muscles know how to protect our bodies is by creating tightness. What tightness does to serve us is that it inhibits motion. It makes it so it's not fun to move in that motion, right? And that's on purpose. So usually you'll notice, when you killed it in the gym, the next day you might feel a whole bunch of tightness. Your body's saying, okay, let's never do that again, at least right now, or at least in the foreseeable, for future, let's not do that. Or let's say you sprained your ankle. Let's say you're walking and you rolled your ankle off a curb, and you get a whole bunch of muscle tightness down in your calf, down in your toes. You might notice like things aren't moving very well. Well, that's a really good protective mechanism of your body to say, hey, we shouldn't move this right now. Our bodies and muscles do an amazing job at orchestrating that protection.
And Julie, that's a really, really big point. This idea that, one, muscle tightness is in many ways purposeful, and then also this idea that it is a protection mechanism designed by our body to help keep our body safe. That's a really, really big thing. And so, I like the examples you brought up of, different times when we see, our muscles tightening up, like if we've had an injury or something like that. But I think we also then can take that next step with it and say, hey, if you wake up in the morning and your low back is tight, you may not have had an injury overnight. There may not have been a trauma, but your body may still be perceiving that something's not optimal. Something's not working how it should work. And so its best solution right now is to tighten up these muscles to protect you, just like it would if there was an injury or there was a trauma. And I think that's oftentimes where we get this kind of disconnect where, hey, if we have a trauma and things feel tight, we can relate it to the trauma. But if we don't have a trauma and things feel tight, we don't have anything to relate it to. So it must just be that, the tightness just shouldn't be there. So, well, the tightness is still serving a reason. It still has a purpose. And that purpose is probably relatively the same as it would be if there was a trauma or there was an injury. You're just not able to perceive everything that your brain and your nervous system is able to perceive of what's going on with your body. And so that's your body's way of telling you, hey, you know what? There's something going on. You need to get, something different needs to be done for your body, with your body, how you're eating, how you're exercising, how you're sleeping, how you're managing your stress, whatever. But that's your body's signal, its way of telling you that, you know what, something's not quite right now. You need to go get yourself checked out. And I think we try to override those signals and say, you know what, I don't like the tightness. It's uncomfortable. I need to get rid of it. So I need to loosen everything up. And that really may not be your best option.
You're right, Charlie. It might not be your best option because while we're experiencing tight muscles, so let's review. We're experiencing tight muscles. We want to loosen them so that we have a feeling of looseness. When we loosen muscles, what's happening is that we're asking muscles to not do what they're supposed to do. And we just reviewed 3 really amazing things that muscles do. Number 1, they try to move you. They allow you to move. Number 2, they keep joints healthy. And number 3, they protect us. So here's the thing. When you're trying to loosen muscles, you're asking the muscles to do a worse job at those 3 things. You're asking them to do a worse job at helping you move. You're asking them to do a worse job at keeping your joints healthy. And number 3, you're asking them to do a worse job at protecting you. And what this does is it promotes 3 things. Less motion, which we know is not great. Number 2, less healthy joints, which we also know is not great. And number 3, less ability to protect our bodies from injury. So we're making our bodies a lot more vulnerable. And in the end, we're really pushing our bodies to do more of what we weren't trying to do, right? Like a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm going to loosen up so I can have more motion. But actually, it usually will lead to less motion, which is why usually when you do loosening activities, it lasts for a couple hours maybe, because your body's actively trying to keep muscles functioning well, keep the protective mechanisms operating well. So when we're thinking about we got to loosen muscles, what we have to really understand is that although we might be trying to strive toward this feeling sensation, this outcome feeling of looseness, we're also compromising the integrity and the work that muscles are trying to do. And do we want that? Because that's what's happening.
So what's our alternative in the case? Okay. If you're feeling, you know what, I feel tight, my hamstrings feel tight, my low back feels tight, my neck and shoulders feel tight, and you're telling me I shouldn't try to loosen them up. What should I do? So here are the alternative to do is to do something to get your muscles contracting better. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there and you're like, wait, you just spent the last 15 minutes telling me that I was feeling tight because muscles are contracting. And now you're telling me that in order to loosen up, I need to get muscles contracting better? How does that make any sense? Julie, you want to enlighten them with this?
Here's the dealio. When some muscles are doing a great job at contracting and other muscles are doing a great job at not contracting, we feel tightness. So the tightness that we feel is really an imbalance in muscle ability. And what we find all the time when we're addressing people with MAT and using our specific style of personal training is that we're trying to ensure that all muscles, which I'm not sure if we can ever get all muscles firing well, but as many muscles as possible firing as well as they can, we find that people achieve a sense of looseness and a feeling of looseness without having to loosen muscles. So what it really is it's this imbalance. It's this difference. It's this thing where it's like, hey, some muscles are doing a good job, some are not. We can also call this compensation, which means some muscles are kind of overtaking for other muscles. So when we want to feel this sense of looseness without losing and without telling muscles to do a bad job at what they're supposed to do, if we can get muscles to be more balanced, meaning every muscle is trying to carry their own weight, then our bodies will have that sense of looseness because everything is doing the appropriate job rather than trying to take the tight muscles and loosen them, which, as we just talked about, has some also negative side effects, meaning we're down regulating those muscles. We actually want to rev up the weaker muscles and get everything kind of at the playing level.
Julie, you're absolutely right. And so let's kind of dive into this further with this analogy that we like to tell people. And it's this idea of a painting and wires. All right. So let's say you're hanging a painting in your home and it's a pretty expensive painting. It's a pretty heavy painting. And so you want to make sure that it's, really going to stay on the wall. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 3 wires and hang that painting up. All right. Now, let's say over time, one of those wires snaps. So it's no longer able to hold up the painting. And now you have 2 wires that are holding up the painting. Well, now are those wires going to be looser or tighter than they were before? Before, they were having to hold a third of the weight. Now they're having to hold half of the weight of the painting. Well, their workload just increased, which means they're going to be tighter. Now, like we've been talking about, oftentimes we don't like this feeling of tightness. So let's say we decide to try to loosen one up and we loosen it up to the point where it can no longer hold the painting anymore. which means instead of 2 wires holding the painting, now we only have 1 wire holding the painting, and that wire is having to hold 100% of the weight of the painting. Well, now this wire is way tighter than it was before. It started off only having to hold a third, then it was holding half, and now it's holding 100% of the weight of the painting. It's way tighter. It's having to do way more. Well, if we try to loosen up this wire, what's going to happen to the painting? That expensive painting is going to come crashing down and get ruined. We don't want that to happen. So the question becomes, how can we reduce the tightness in this wire without having that painting coming crashing down? And the obvious answer is to find the wires that were working well before but no longer are, and get them working better, get them doing more, get those tighter. And so we find the wires that are too loose or weren't working well, and we replace them. And now instead of having 1 wire holding up, we have 3 wires holding up, and there's less tension going through each, and each of them is able to work how they should without feeling that tightness. So this idea of, wow, when I feel tight, muscles are contracting a lot. In order to get rid of the tightness, I need to get muscles contracting more. That's the idea, that the muscles that you need to get contracting more are the ones that aren't contracting enough, which is why you're feeling the ones that are contracting too much as being tight, as causing the tightness.
Charlie, I love that analogy that you just gave, because it really shows how when more muscles are working appropriately, we feel less tight. We feel more loose. And when more muscles are not working, then we feel the tightness. So our goal, here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg and a lot of our colleagues, is to help individuals increase the amount of muscles that they have that are functioning and contracting well. And what this does, what a very common side effect, is that they feel so much looser without having to loosen their muscles. Let's go ahead and review some action items that you can do to start maybe participating in this idea of get more muscles working to achieve a more loose feeling. The first one, pretty obvious, is go find a local MAT specialist. Get on an MAT table. If you've not experienced muscle activation techniques, it is pretty different than anything you've done before. You can go to muscleactivation.com and search your local area. You can also just reach out to us at info@matschaumburg.com. Maybe you're in our area. The MAT community is also pretty tight, so we know a lot of people. We can definitely refer you to someone in your area.
The second action item is this idea of reverse stretching. Okay. Now, you probably know of stretching, where let's say you're like reaching for your toes and you're feeling like your hamstrings lengthen, you're feeling your low back lengthen, you're feeling your glutes lengthen. Well, we want to talk about doing the reverse of that. And the reverse of that is when you're reaching for your toes, instead of trying to feel your hamstrings and your glutes and your low back lengthen, you want to try to feel your quadriceps and your hip flexors and your abs squeeze and tighten. Because when those squeeze and tighten, now all of a sudden that's promoting this idea of getting muscles contracting better instead of trying to downregulate how much muscles are contracting. So that would really be a bonus to help you with the I am feeling tight, but I need to get muscles contracting better conundrum that we've brought up.
The last thing you can just throw right into how you're currently weight training, and that is slowing down the ends of your ranges. So this is usually the areas of the rep where most people speed through, which really encourages tight muscles, meaning the imbalance of muscles. But right when you start lifting the weight stack up on a machine, or right when you start to move, you want that to be a very controlled and slow motion. And at the point where you turn around, you want that to be very controlled and slow. I'm going to give you 2 examples, and these are the 2 examples that we actually gave video demos on our 2-Minute Tuesdays from yesterday. So make sure you go check it out. That would have been 2-Minute Tuesdays on December 10th, 2019. But I'm going to walk you through it in case you missed that or in case you haven't gotten a chance to check it out. So we did the lat pull down. So if you think about a lat pull down, your arms are all the way up in the air, like you're raising your arms to get the attention of a teacher. And then you pull it down almost like you're doing a pull-up, and your arms are kind of tucked in by your sides, and then it goes back up. So the two places where you really need to slow down is right at the very top, like right where the weight stack starts moving. You really want to contract and control through that spot. And then also you really want to slow down at that turnaround point. So once you're slowly pulling that weight stack all the way to its bottom position, you really want to squeeze your shoulder blades and freeze at that position. The other exercise that we reviewed in our 2-Minute Tuesdays is the knee extension. So usually you're sitting in a chair and your knees you're seated and your knees are at 90 degrees, and then you extend your knees so that your knees and legs are pointed straight out in front of you. The two places you really want to work on your control and slowing down is right at the beginning. So right as you start departing from that 90 degrees, and then also at that turnaround point at the top, really squeezing your quads and pausing while your legs are straight out. These two things you'll really notice a lot more contraction if you just do that little switch, but it will also really help your muscle function and the ability for your muscles to contract.
So if you're sitting there and you're feeling like, hey, you know what, my back is always tight or my hamstrings are always tight and I keep trying to do things to loosen my muscles up, we want to let you know that there are alternatives out there to just trying to do the relaxation and loosening part. And it may be that what you need to do is actually get muscles contracting more and contracting better, so the muscles that are contracting too much can start to relax. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that has a lot of tight muscles, that is constantly complaining that their hamstrings are feeling tired, their back is feeling tired, their shoulders and neck are tightening up? Share this episode with them so they can hear what alternatives are out there to helping their muscles loosen up, to helping their body function better, and to helping their muscles contract better. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this podcast who are looking for podcasts on health, who are looking for podcasts on exercise, and it helps us show up higher in those search results. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.